Welcome back to another episode of The Evolving Hunter. I'm so happy that you've chosen to join us today. I think we're going to have an outstanding episode talking about hunting and recruitment and the whole R3 world. But I have an amazing guest with me today, Taniya Bethke, who works with the Council to Advance the Hunting and Shooting Sports. Thanks so much for taking the time to join me today, Taniya. I really appreciate it.
I am so jazzed about being here right now. I'm like downright Twitter-pated to be on the show, and I appreciate the invite.
Twitter-pated? Man,
Yeah,
I ditto. That sounds great. I'd love to open the floor just to give you a chance to introduce yourself, where you're at, what you're doing, all that, whatever works for you.
Cool. I am the Director of Operations for the Council, right here, the Council to Advance Hunting and the Shooting Sports. I am, as they say, an adult onset hunter, which sounds a little bit like a disease, but I'll own it. I'll take it. I am the proud partner to Eric Bethke. He's a state park manager here in southern Minnesota where we live. And we have two feral little kids who run around barefoot, and we can barely keep socks and pants on, both of them. Two daughters, they're 4 and 7.
There's no better way to raise kids than feral. I'm a firm believer in that.
Yeah, I agree with you, and thankfully I do, because I didn't have a choice with either one of these two.
We're getting in South Carolina, we're in spring now. It's 80 degrees right now. And so we're getting our garden together for, getting it ready and kind of waking it back up, and which has meant lots of soil moving, which has equated to my daughter, who's 3, a lot of worm finding. And I've never seen someone so elated than finding a worm.
It's like a pet. It's the next best thing.
But she has her little bluey boots on, her little tiny shovel, and she gets into it trying to find a worm.
Listen, I was like your daughter's age when I was following behind my mom in the garden, and I had a Frisbee with me, and she was like using the shovel, and she was chopping worms in half, and I was putting them on the Frisbee. But I brought them into my bedroom when I was a little kid, and my bedroom had pink shag carpet, and the worms escaped into the pink shag carpets. And I have just awful nightmares of like my kids going out and like wrangling the worms and bring them into their bedrooms, because I don't want to like vacuum crispy worms out of their carpet.
Oh man. She's so cute when she finds them, because she cares for them so well. She has this little rock that she puts them on, and she goes and picks some grass, what she calls lettuce. And she like, here's your bedroom. This is your bed. I mean, she just goes all out on some worms. It's great. I think that's how kids are supposed to grow up,
Absolutely.
dirty.
Absolutely. And to your point, just like having a chance to dig in the dirt and play around barefooted and wild and free. That's definitely the dream for us too.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're listening to this podcast, there's a good chance that you're either thinking about hunting for the first time or trying to get better at it. Either way, you need to start with the right foundation. And that's why I'm so excited for the Evolving Hunter podcast to be partnering with CertifiedHunter.com. Certified Hunter offers state-approved online hunter education that's built for real people, not just test takers. You'll learn firearm safety, ethical decision-making, wildlife conservation, and what it actually means to be a responsible hunter in the field. And here's the part that matters most. This isn't about checking a box. It's about showing up prepared, confident, and safe when the season opens. I didn't grow up hunting. I started later in life, and I can tell you firsthand that having clear, practical training makes a huge difference. Certified Hunter helps shorten the learning curve and sets you up to do this the right way from day one. So, if you're ready to take your first step into hunting, or you know someone who is, head to CertifiedHunter.com/evolving hunter and get started today. Again, that's CertifiedHunter.com/evolving hunter, and let's start the right way. So you mentioned that you're an adult onset hunter, which so am I. I'd love to kind of start at the top with your story of how did you get involved in hunting or shooting sports in general, or how did that play out for you?
Jay, it is a process. There's some nuance to this story.
All right.
But yeah, I'm happy to start from the top. So like, I grew up a massive nature nerd, right? Like we camped every summer, spent a lot of time walking in the woods, looking at birds, looking at plants. I grew up on a farm, so I did grow up around my garden. I knew where food came from. We had chickens in the yard and eggs, and I remember helping my mom butcher chickens when I was a kid. We got a quarter beef from the local locker. It's like I always knew where my food came from. And separately from that, I had this deep relationship with nature. My grandfather worked for the Forest Service and was an entomologist. My grandmother was a naturalist writer. My mom was a massive bird nerd, and we loved to camp. So there was always this close relationship with wildlife and wild spaces. But we did not hunt. I did not grow up hunting. I did not have people in my immediate family that hunted either. And interestingly enough, I lived in Minnesota at a time when Hunt Safe or hunter education was offered through the schools. And so I went to a hunter education class through my gym class and like got hunter ed certified when I was 11 because my parents wanted me to go through it. We had firearms in the home. We lived on a farm. We were, always mindful of any animals that might have rabies or anything like that. And so they wanted me to know how to safely be around firearms. But again, nobody hunted. So I had this like kind of this fertile ground I was growing up in where I was like this familiarity with guns. They weren't terrifying. I knew some safety basics with them. And I knew where my food came from and I cared about that. And then this wild relationship with nature. So by the time I got to school, I was like, yeah, we're going to go for conservation biology. I'm an animal nerd. I went for conservation biology and captive wildlife. And I went to school at this really neat place, Stevens Point, Wisconsin. And it's like the nexus between two very disparate populations. Everybody cares about wildlife and wild spaces. And the people that were in my natural resources classes were like equal parts, like patchouli wearing, tie dye clad, like hippie folk. And
Those are my people.
right. And then camo wearing, doe urine smelling wildlife folk, right? And so like all of us were in the same classes together. We absolutely loved, wild space and wild places, and had the chance to kind of start cross-pollinating with people who, learning about their life stories and their relationships with nature. And all around Stevens Point to this day, like deer opener, you have folks that are like the front yard of their college dorm or house has like a deer hanging from the tree, and so like I was exposed for the first time to hunting culture and got to see other people who participated. I still didn't at that time. So again, fertile ground, right? Like I'm around folks who are intellectually supportive of hunting. I grew up around firearms, like love where my food came from, but I still did not see my personal values really represented in the hunting community and didn't have anybody offering to like take me out. So like flash forward 10 years, I've now lived in South Korea. I've lived in inner city Dallas. I have lived all over the place. And I get hired to come from Dallas to move to South Dakota to be the R3 coordinator. Because of my education and conservation background, they wanted me to come in to oversee all of their educational programs for the wildlife division. So this is like learn to hunt, learn to fish, and outdoor campus programs for the state. And I'm like, y'all know I don't hunt, right? Like, you know that. And they're like, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. We got other people who know how to do that. Just come and do the education part. Well, as soon as you move to Pierre, South Dakota, like you were in prairie country. It's the second smallest capital in the country. It's for 14,000 people. If you don't hunt, fish, or shoot, like you are going to be bored out of your mind. And so I decided like, okay, I guess it's time. I need to learn a thing or two about hunting and where my food comes from. And the coolest part was I had a ton of friends who invited me and actually meant it when they invited me to go with them. And I also saw my values represented in some really great women in that community. One of the women actually now is the R3 coordinator in the state of South Dakota, came in years after me. And we would like put our kids in backpacks and go shoot bows at the range together. And they would invite me over to their house and we would process elk quarters together. And we would all go socialize, and my girlfriends and I would go for a walk in the woods and scout for deer. And it was because of that community of folks actually inviting me, taking me along, socializing around those activities that I was able to be exposed and to get out in the field. But that fertile ground growing up was a really important component. I didn't have a lot of barriers to overcome that a lot of society does when they're getting engaged with hunting and shooting sports for the first time, like perceiving firearms as weapons or of violence, or having social groups that don't support harvesting wildlife for food. Like, I can't imagine if I'd grown up in a community how challenging some of those barriers would have been. And I've lived in some of those communities over the years and deeply understand them. But definitely count myself as fortunate that like I had a family that did raise me outside, or raise me in a way that allowed me to appreciate where my food comes from. I also had a grandpa, like we went to South Carolina when he was 87. I was like 25. And we got down to South Carolina with my grandma and grandpa to visit family members in South Carolina. And I'm a, biology nerd, right? So have always loved wildlife. And I've never been squicked out by, like dead animals. It's never bothered me. So like we did necropsies when I was in school. Didn't bug me. Well, we get down there and one of our family friends, who like flint knaps and made his own bow and arrows, he goes out and harvests 2 deer while we're down there. And my grandpa's like, guess what, Buttercup? Like, we're going to go learn how to process deer together. So we hang these deer up, and my grandpa walks me through this whole process of like, how do we process this deer, and skin him out. And meanwhile, he's showing me like all the body parts and organs and everything because I'm fascinated by that. And so again, that was just part of the fertile ground that led up to me being able to really participate once I got to that community in South Dakota and found friends who really wanted to bring me with, and also showed me this really beautiful relationship with nature and wildlife that included uh, a respectful, ethical harvest and using as much of the animal as possible. And that to me was just really beautiful and helped me see my own values represented in the community.
That's a cool story. I think I feel like we have like somewhat similar stories, right? In
Oh
that
yeah.
starting off like in sort of almost like the outdoor education side, but not necessarily hunting and fishing side, right?
Mhm.
Or hunting and shooting sports side. And I think it really like points to the role that like identity plays for humans, right? I was going to say us, but like humans, like all people, right? In that, like in outdoor ed, when I was working in that, side of the world, there was not really a door open to identify with hunting, right?
Yeah.
It was like the identity was a little, and not disparaging outdoor ed in any way in that, in that it's just, that's how that operates, right? There's a different focus on the way in which you utilize outdoor spaces. But I eventually, similarly to you, I ended up in communities that opened the door, that made it okay to feel that you can identify with, utilizing outdoor spaces for hunting as well as, other types of recreation. So,
Yeah. Or
yeah.
people that don't fill the stereotypes, right? That like add nuance to the conversation. That like you
Mhm.
can celebrate Earth Day and want to do trash pickups and wear patchouli in your free time. And
As a
also be
pastime,
interested in the environment. Like I wear Chacos my summertime. I got solid Chaco tan line. Um, and also want to have this intimate relationship with where your food comes from, and to want to
Yeah.
forage and want to hunt and harvest wildlife to feed your family and to provide locally sourced high quality protein for your family. Like having that nuance introduced, that is not a story that is told on
Yeah.
any other podcast. It's not on
Mhm.
any hunting channel I've seen.
No.
It's not, and not a nuance that's part of a national conversation I see much of. And so I think that's probably part of the reason why for years I just assumed it wasn't meant to be for me.
Yeah. I love that description so much. I think mostly because I identify with it so much, right? I think that really drives home. So
Yeah.
was there, and if so, do you recall a moment where, like in your hunting experience, where that kind of served as the spark that was like, okay, this is something I want to dedicate my time, resources, efforts, right, into pursuing.
Oh man, I feel like there were a lot of sparks along the way. There had to be repeated ones over and over and over
Yeah.
again. It would be so easy to get discouraged. And there were anti-sparks happening at the same time, right? There's like the glimmers, and then there are the
Yeah.
things that are happening where you're like, maybe this isn't for me. And there has to be enough glimmers and enough sparks to keep the momentum going. Um, I think some of the first experiences that I had that helped me feel like, yeah, I want a whole lot more of that in my life. There were kind of two key experiences. And one was my friend Mark wanted to train his dog, and he's like, "Hey, it's dove season. Come on out. I'll let you borrow one of my shotguns and we're going to go harvest some doves and we can train my dog while we're out there." And it was just like it was on the edge of Lake Oahe in South Dakota, and he had this beautiful pup that he was training, and we just set up he set up this little decoy at the edge of the water, gave me the shotgun, and I'm like I said, I've been proficient with firearms for a long time, so the firearm wasn't scary to me. But like I had heard how people talk about how dove harvesting is like really challenging because doves fly super fast, like flying chunky hockey pucks. It's crazy town. And so to sit there and socialize with a friend of mine and see these doves come into the decoy and then harvest four of them that night while BSing with a friend in front of this beautiful scenery and watching the dog work, all of those components were like, oh, I can make I can make this happen. I I have I have a couple of the key pieces necessary to not only feel proficient in myself that I can harvest wildlife, but then I took those birds home and I processed them, and my husband and I loved the flavor of the meat. And I had the satisfaction of like, it's this like very old, deep lizard brain, knuckle dragon sense of satisfaction of like, I have fed my family with my own hands, right? Um, but what I didn't expect was the intense beauty of the whole experience of the sun setting over the lake, of watching a dog work, of reinforcing my friendships with someone. And that was the bulk of the experience. That beauty is what showed up in my second experience as well.
Yeah,
Um, I didn't harvest anything the second time. And honest to God, I spend 99% of my time in the field not harvesting a damn thing.
you and me both. Yeah.
Yeah. I go for long walks with my shotgun. Her
Yep.
name is Vera.
Hmm.
Sometimes we don't see anything.
Yeah. I, I, that's a great story. I love to try to talk about sparks, even though I may call it something different on this podcast
Mhm.
frequently, because I think it's very common or I'm trying not to say the word easy, but it's easy to identify sparks as relates to harvest, right?
Mhm.
And, so many folks, well, that when I harvested that 10-point buck, with my spark, I knew I was in it. But for novice hunters, like you really can't rely on harvest to be really the reason why you do it initially, right?
Yeah.
Like I feel like all of my sparks were completely social based, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm incredibly introverted.
I,
Uh,
yeah, I know you hate people. I can tell from
you
your
know,
very core that people are
yeah,
hard.
super quiet, don't talk much. No, but they were really all 100% community relationship focused because that's what I really enjoyed. Like I got time away from work, time away from whatever other responsibilities I have to go spend the day in the woods and hang
Mhm.
out with my friends, right?
Yeah.
um, and uh, if harvesting was needed for me to have a spark, then I would have stopped hunting like a long time ago, right? Because I think I went through 3 seasons before
Mhm.
I actually like there's still disagreement on a pheasant, whether it was my shot or a buddy shot. So it might have been 2 seasons, might have been 3. I don't know.
Did you shoot the tail feathers, but I shot the head?
There's some disagreement there. But
I think back.
like that all of those things, I think it's important to like pull for a novice hunter to pull those into the equation, right?
Yeah.
As it relates to why you're doing it, why you're staying in it, right? And continue to be involved and contribute. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a great.
I think to your point, a six is kind of my magic number. Like I went pheasant hunting like six times before I pieced all the pieces together and harvested anything. Like I kept going, oh, look, a pretty bird, like not mounting my shotgun. But it
Yeah.
was because, to your point, I was with people I cared about. I was like, there was a beautiful cornflower blue sky ahead above me, and it was, gorgeous cattails just waving in the wind, and like all of this beautiful. land that I was witnessing in a way that I never would have otherwise if I wasn't out there to hunt. And that second spark for me was much like that. I was like sitting on the edge of a hill watching deer and a clearing below me, and I was deer hunting with a girlfriend of mine. Again, dear friend of mine. Casey was one of my first mentors. And we again went out in the field 6 times, saw deer every time, but like it wasn't about the harvest. And this day the deer were either, does and I had a buck tag or something. Um, but we sat there on the edge of that hill. It was cold outside, overlooking Lake Oahe again, and this snow squall blew in off the lake. And I remember the peace and quiet and stillness and absolute perfection of this moment, watching this snow squall blow in, these deer with snow on their coats, grazing in the field below us, and thinking like, I would have no reason to be out here at all to
Yeah.
witness the absolute perfection and beauty of this moment with a dear friend of mine, unless I was out here to hunt. And that had nothing to do with harvest. It had
Yeah.
everything to do with this deep spiritual fulfillment that I get when I'm in wild spaces and just how perfectly everything seems to fit together in those moments.
Yeah. Absolutely. I did I think a great episode of this podcast a
I'm
couple
sure it was
episodes
awesome. I'm sure it was
ago.
beautiful, stunning, really.
Just, I mean, masterpiece. But no, it was with Francis Righteous in Montana.
What a name.
And
I'm just
I
right.
know. Yeah, he's an awesome guy. But he
Like,
shared a statistic that he had heard or read somewhere that in Montana, a hunter harvests on average, a hunter harvests one elk every 7 years.
hmm?
And as you and I both, like we spend a lot of our time thinking about novice hunters and how do we help hunters to make this transition from non-hunters to actual, not just buying a license 1 year, trying it and never coming back, but actually becoming like invested hunters in, for a long term. You start thinking about it takes 7 years, right? To
Yeah.
to harvest an elk in Montana. Like,
Mhm.
how in the world do you I can't think of anything that if it took me 7 years, like if I start from nothing, it took 7 years to actually, accomplish what the perceived goal of that thing is. I'd quit like so long ago,
Oh, yeah.
and so
Yeah.
it comes down to, we're talking about reframing what it is that keeps you going for that time. So this is a great
Mhm.
I love this.
Yeah.
I can sit on the soapbox for a long time.
Well, and like if you genuinely enjoy wildlife watching, if you genuinely enjoy
Yeah.
plant identification, if you love having a chance to do bird ID, like if you like tracking animals and looking at their prints in the mud, there's so many things to love while you're out in these wild spaces that experience as hunting are rich with
Mm-hmm.
other naturalist, environmental conservation concepts that are a core to my passion and always have been, right? That really has nothing to do with harvesting an animal. Um, and sometimes, again, to your point, like sometimes a harvest happens. It's
Yeah.
honestly rare compared to the amount of time we spend in the woods
Mm-hmm.
looking and learning and appreciating everything that we're seeing. And that was new to me. I didn't understand that at all until I had spent some time looking for wildlife to harvest and was just starting to see that, oh man, I've had some negative stereotypes about hunters floating around in my head for a long time, and this changes my whole perspective around what that time in the field is like. Because like you hear stories all the time. You see ads representing these like bloody grip and grin images of hunters
Yeah.
in the field and the images of a typically older Caucasian man
Mm-hmm.
who's out there with his son in the field with this bloody animal between them. And they look super stoked that they harvested this animal and it has a huge rack on its head. And when I went, it was like, I harvested a small doe. I
Mm-hmm.
cried my ass off when I harvested that doe for the first time. It felt deeply personal and reverent in a way that I had never seen represented. And I don't look like those pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not learn from my dad, right? Like, so it is definitely interesting seeing all of the different ways that pathways into these activities, to your point, how recruitment can happen, all the different ways that folks can get into recruitment and retention. um, how people get into wanting to do this, and how the different components of that relationship with nature lock it in way more than a harvest does.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I think at the end of the day, it is important at least to note that if you're someone who's interested, someone listening, if you're listening and interested in becoming a hunter, that harvesting an animal doesn't have to be your like primary uh objective, right? If that makes sense. Like I don't know. I I feel that sometimes I fall on a side of being a little like not in line with the greater hunting community as it relates
Mhm.
to ideals and things like that. So I try to ride the line, as much as I can. I
You
don't
are
want to out
such a
myself
line
too
rider,
much,
for sure.
I know I'm totally a line rider. Yeah.
Right
Um,
there.
so but like at the end of the day, like if your goal is to become a hunter, that's great. But also, if your goal is just to spend more time outside and become a student of wildlife, become a student of nature, and learn, and for the eventual, you're going to harvest things as a part of that. That's cool too. Like like primary reasons for hunting don't have to be because I want to kill an animal, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
can cover a really wide spectrum, and that individual that may be on that side is just as much as of a hunter, right, as the person who's like just out there slinging bucks, right? Whatever the right terminology is there, So, um, it's all part of the greater hunting community. But
Yeah.
um,
I like one thing you just touched on, and that's like the wanting to kill an animal. I have to say a thing about this. I was not sure I could kill an animal. I'm not even
sure,
sure that I did not I did not have any certainty that I wanted to kill an animal, but I was very interested in I eat meat. And so
yeah,
I was interested in being a part of the process that got the meat to my plate. And I was
hmm
like, well, if I'm okay with somebody else killing wildlife for me or killing farm animals for me, then I need to be okay with taking ownership of that process. I'm not saying that I have that expectation for other people. Like, this
yeah,
is not a judgment I'm passing on other people, but it was part of what I had to go through, which is part of the reason why I first started harvesting birds. I was like, okay, I feel like I could try this with dove, and if that goes okay and I don't have a mental breakdown about it, like maybe I could graduate to something else. And it was a very stepwise progress. It took me 2 years before I finally got to harvesting a deer because I worked through like, okay, a little bigger birds. Am I okay with it? The idea or want of killing had nothing to do with
yeah,
this pathway. So to your point, like you're absolutely right. There are a lot of other components that play a role in this whole identification of being a hunter. And I think it's okay if the actual harvest itself is something that takes a while to settle in yourself about.
100%. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Uh, I mean, I think you could even argue that if the harvest doesn't have some sort of settling in yourself, right, as you
Right.
said,
Right.
it probably should, right, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of responsibility in it. But okay,
Mhm.
so you went to go work as the R3 coordinator. Is that the
Mhm.
correct term? Was you R3 coordinator
Yep.
in South Dakota?
Mhm.
How long were you in that role?
I was there for about 4.5 years. Um, where do you want to go from there?
What? Okay. Well, then did you go from to the Council of
Yeah,
Anti-Hunting and Shooting Sports? We're just going to call it the council because it's a really
the
long
council.
name.
Yeah.
Did you go
Yeah.
to the
So
council from there?
I did. So I had started working when I was working in South Dakota. I had the chance to do a lot of bridge building across disparate communities. R3 is about recruitment, retention, and reactivation. It's creating these pathways for folks to go from beginner all the way through to lifelong participant in outdoor recreation activities. And you can use R3 principles for anything, but in our field, we typically talk about it in relation to hunting, shooting sports, fishing, and boating. And so as I was working in South Dakota, we were helping create these pathways for folks that takes care of our established hunting base and making sure that folks that are already established hunters are retained or reactivated if they fall off, and also create pathways for novices that are first interested in getting involved in the first place. So while I was doing that, I started working in South Dakota at a time where we were doing a whole lot of cool programs for specifically women, and I didn't have any images of like women hunting pheasants ever anywhere. And I was like, but I, nowhere. So I got a multi-state conservation grant to make a toolkit that showed representation of women and people of color upland game hunting in the Midwest. And my work with the Midwest R3 committee on multi-state conservation grants raised the awareness of the council about the work that I was doing to do some bridge building in the community and some representation work. And the council took a look at me and the skills that I had at that time to do some coordination and project management and said, all right, hey, interested in this role with us, and brought me in 2021. And so I've been with the council ever since. And I've been working with state agencies and NGOs and our federal partners and our industry partners to establish those best practices of how we create meaningful pathways for new and novice and prospective folks, as well as take care of our established user bases to make sure that everyone has clear, well lit, smooth pathways to participation that overcome the barriers that those individual groups of folks face when they try to participate in these things in the first time. And I think because I was an adult onset hunter and faced some of those barriers myself, I had a very intimate insight into how I can provide that support, at least for some populations, and how to also guide folks to just ask good questions and listen when they're talking to new audiences about how they can support them.
That was really kind of leading to my next question. In 2021, moving to the council, moving really to like a national stage to help drive R3 efforts. You were, I don't know how, like what the timeline is, but I don't know if you would still qualify yourself as new, but you're had been hunting super duper long, right? Super duper, that's a technical term.
That's very, it's right next, right next to some of my other favorite terms for, maybe we'll get into this.
But, and so I feel like there's a lot of folks, and we talk about the idea of passion, right? There's a lot of folks that don't that work their jobs and don't necessarily have a passion for what they're doing, right? I've worked with you over a number of years now, and can say like you are passionate about your work and you care deeply about what you're doing. So I'm trying to think how I want to phrase this. Like what led to this, like sort of entering into hunting and then really developing this passion for helping to grow our community of hunters, introduce new people, bring back the old people, right? All from the R3 effort perspective.
Yeah, thank you for that question. It's interesting because like when I first tell my story and I tell people like I wasn't a hunter and then I got hired to be an R3 coordinator, and they're like, that sounds like a real gamble. But there are a couple of key components of who I am and life experiences that I've had that prepared me for this, that really were almost like paving stones that paved the way into this work, that equipped me and also helped me feel like this is passion work. And I think some of those paving stones have been belonging has always been a core tenet of who I am, and that is helping others understand and feel a sense of belonging. I have spent a lot of time in places where I felt like I did not belong. I was elected as a county board supervisor when I was 18.
What? How did I know that?
Yeah, talk about that Portage County Board Supervisor
Dang.
in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. So talk about like being in rooms where I was not the norm, but had to develop the skill of bridging between different disparate communities, which comes with a whole lot of curiosity and good questions and learning how to find common ground with folks that are all over the map. And I think that continued and continues to this day, that belonging, cultivating belonging, helping people feel understood and heard wherever they are in the map, is continues to this day to be a core value of mine and central to how I do this work. That belonging is something that I continue cultivating in the hunting and shooting sports community. And in addition to that, I've told you I was a nature nerd from way back. This is this cultivating relationships between people and wild spaces and wildlife, especially folks that didn't grow up with it, that's also been one of my core tenets. I used to work with the Minnesota Conservation Corps, and we had folk, coming from inner city Minneapolis and St. Paul and all over the place that didn't have relationships with wild spaces, and we were taking them on field crews into the Laurentian Ranger District in northern Minnesota and the Superior Hiking Trail, and they were seeing the northern lights for the first time. And
Wow.
I got to see young people first grow to understand, respect, and then love conservation work and wildlife and wild spaces. And so that passion of opening up access to a relationship with wildlife and wild spaces, that's a deep, deep core value. And then I was me, and I grew up in the middle of a cornfield in southern Minnesota around a bunch of very traditional farm community folk. And they came into my stepdad's agricultural chemical business while I was a young person growing up. While I was a raging hippie growing up in the middle of a cornfield in southern Minnesota. And again, figuring out where the common ground is and how to bridge build between disparate communities. That those pieces all came together in
Yeah,
this work. And that's how I continue to live through this work. Sense of belonging, a love for wildlife and wild spaces, and the connection between people and those places.
that's so cool. I
Thank you.
I love it.
That's pretty great.
Pretty good. Pretty awesome. Yeah, no, I mean, I get go back to just the parallels there. Like, I'd had this not long, but it felt long, career in outdoor education, right?
Mhm.
Where I had developed this passion for helping people to discover the learning in interactions with the natural world, right?
Yep.
Outside of hunting. And then I started hunting, and then I've been hunting like 3 years maybe, and I became the director of education for the International Hunter Education Association. And
Yep.
so I felt, I mean, out of place. Like on day 7 of my work at IHEA, I was giving a presentation at a Western AFWA meeting. And
Yeah.
man, but similar, like, I mean, very similar to what you said. It whether it was, on an 18-day canoe trip in the Everglades or in the Adirondacks of New York, or helping people to learn how to safely go into a wilderness environment while hunting, and um, the outcomes are similar, right? As it relates to personal growth, as it relates to learning how to develop grit and perseverance and push yourself in certain ways and push your boundaries, and all like those outcomes are very, very similar. So like it took me a while to realize that, honestly, but the the skills were sort of one-to-one, like transferable. Like, how do you help people to have an experience, discover the learning in their experience, and then project that learning onto future learning opportunities,
Yeah.
And so it was all sort of that's what gave me my drive in IHA, because it wasn't necessarily like, yeah, I really enjoyed hunting. Like, it's cool. I liked it, but it wasn't like, I want to make more hunters, like,
No.
I need more hunters on the landscape. It was, I want to help people to develop relationships with nature,
Excellent.
because at the end of the day, I think that helps us as a big C community, right, of humans, is having appreciation for the natural spaces that we have,
Yeah.
um, you
And
know,
that's
globally.
multifaceted, right? Like the parallels between us are also multifaceted. Like this
Mhm.
environmental education background, right? I was working at the wilds in Ohio and doing environmental ed work in Dallas, like, and in Houston ISD. That idea of nature appreciation and love and how it relates back to us as human beings and where we fit in those systems is this foundational concept that unites all of us, right?
Yeah.
And that multifaceted relationships with nature and embracing those multifaceted relationships, even as a hunter or as a member of our conservation community, I think those are stories that are often left out, but I do think it's a uniting factor, right? Oftentimes we're talking about the harvest all the time,
Yeah.
but not stewardship and conservation
Mhm.
work and hands on in the dirt ways that we care for wildlife and wild spaces.
Yeah. And honestly, I think I could make a pretty decent argument that having been on both sides now, right? That hunting, I don't want to say stronger or better. It generates a different type of appreciation for wild spaces and nature.
Yeah.
Because I spent a long time of my early days in the field, and like you'd see a deer track, and you'd be like, "Cool, a deer track," or you'd find a turkey feather, "Cool," and not disparaging in any way, but oftentimes when I was in those settings, it was very like itinerary focused. Like I have a group of 12 students who are on this 18-day expedition. They've never been camping before in their life. I have to keep them alive for 18 days, right? I have to keep them fed. I have to keep them not lost, right? Like it's very itinerary, like focused on the group and just really using the outdoors as a medium to teach life
Mm-hmm.
lessons, right? Whereas in hunting, really the environment that you're in plays a much more significant role, right? So in
Mm-hmm.
hunting, it's okay, there's a deer track. Let's go see where this deer is moving. What was he eating? I wonder why he was here. Like
Mm-hmm.
it makes it a richer experience a little bit to start to look at environments from a hunter's perspective. And I think that's been really fascinating to me,
Yeah.
and my development as a hunter. So super, super awesome.
Well, and to add to that, right? So this concept that like becoming a hunter is a process,
Mm-hmm.
right? I was talking to my executive director, Chuck Sykes, this morning about how like becoming a hunter is a process. I feel like when you first start, you feel like you have to be proficient in all things right away, or you're gonna
Yeah.
look like an ass, right? Like my ultimate fear is I'm gonna be or look like an ass when I'm out in
Yeah.
the field. I don't want that.
Mhm.
But just that constant reminder that like no matter who you are, becoming a hunter is this process, and it's a long arc process. This is like there's no perfection in the beginning. There's no immediate learning to run. Like you got to crawl, then walk, then run, and you're always picking up skills along the way that get you just a little bit further down the road. So you were
Yeah.
just talking about like some of the skills that you use when you're in the field as a hunter that are rich, make the richness to the experience happen. And like those are skills that develop over time, like tracking or Googling what the hell what did deer eat this time of year? You're right.
Yeah.
Like what
Yeah.
tell me about whitetail behavior. I don't know. Like what is that? And I think that it can be really overwhelming feeling like you have to be a master at all things right away. And I just remember this stepwise process, multi-year stepwise process, and just like reminding myself and others, like, don't get discouraged. This is baked in. It's okay to not know everything, and it's okay to like just do the next small skill that gets you a little bit farther. Start out on nature hikes just looking for deer sign.
Yeah.
Like start out going in the field looking for birds and identifying when you do see a male pheasant. Like just learning little by little in conversations and through Google searches what behavior wildlife has and how you might look for them and what kind of habitats they'll be in. But yeah, that stepwise process, man, it is a process for sure.
It really is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. I won't, in our situations, right, where you go from a relatively new hunter to positions of leadership in the industry, I won't jump into the idea of the imposter syndrome in hunting, which I
Oh,
certainly felt.
I still
Um,
feel it. I'm the director of
oh, oh,
operations for the Council to Advance
oh,
Hunting and the Shooting Sports.
me too. Well, you brought up your executive director, Chuck Sykes. We had an opportunity when I was still at IHA to go to his farm. It's this amazing, just
That's
magical
cool.
place. And,
Mhm.
I'd been hunting, I don't know, 6 years at that point, and Chuck is arguably like a super hunter. And, and he like, they were talking about actually going hunting while we were there. I was like, oh God, please no, please no.
Like,
Like,
don't
not
make me
that I
depend
wouldn't
of other
love to
people.
hunt, but like, just like, I just didn't feel ready.
Yeah, I trust me. I still get intimidated from time to time too. But I think what's also been really reassuring is how many people that are in that like mentorship role that have just been nothing but incredible
Yeah.
advocates. Again, in a way where my perceptions of the whole thing were my own barrier, and people have shown up in ways been encouraging and resourceful, and Chuck is no exception. He's been a phenomenal advocate and support for folks throughout his whole career, and I certainly components of mine as well.
I Could not agree more. Yeah. Like never in my own weird headspace have I, ever encountered anyone in our space that's been like judgmental or weird
Mhm.
or,
Mhm.
it's
Oh,
nothing
there's
but
plenty of us that are
nothing but
weird.
support.
I mean, like
Yeah.
that's going.
There's tons of weirdos. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. Well, I'm talking, in the sense of like, when you do it, like, okay, I don't know how to do this, it's never like, but it's, oh, let me help you. I'll be glad to show you. It's all in my head. Oh no.
Well, I think there's definitely reasons for why the assumption that we don't belong exists, right? Like
Yeah.
we've collected enough information over the years to feel like, oh, I don't belong in this space. So now I do feel like an outsider and I'm worried. Um, but I think pushing back on that to be vulnerable and to develop relationships and to be curious and to lean in on opportunities when they arise and to take advantage of invitations and
Hmm.
assume that even if you are not the dominant culture, if you don't belong to the dominant group, you still have every right to be there and to be curious, right?
100%. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. So what, so the council's been around for a while.
Mhm.
I don't know exactly how many years,
Yeah.
but what, what problem was the council created to solve?
Thanks for asking that question. So, in 2007, the like broad research at the time had indicated that participation in hunting was declining and had been since the 80s. And so there was a White House initiative that was issued in 2007 that said, hey, we need to create an organization to address the decline in hunting participation. And as you know, there are a lot of different implications for why we need hunting participation. Wildlife management being one, limiting disease, providing control of disease spread throughout wildlife diseases through wildlife management, maintaining healthy populations, that's one component. Um, the relationship between hunting participation and funding for conservation is certainly an intense one that the country was paying attention to at that time as well, as protecting a lifelong heritage and lifestyle choice that people had made since literally human beings became human beings, was another component to the discussion. So an organization to focus on participation and ensuring pathways into participation in partnership with agencies was the push. And so the council was created and chartered in 2009. And so our main goal was to increase participation in and public support for hunting and shooting sports to ensure the continuation of those activities and of participation in them.
So R3, as I understand it, has moved from, uh, because we're on this timeline, right? In the early 2000s into the 2010s, right? There was this
Oh.
identification that we have this declining population of hunters. Obviously, that is a really big deal to the hunting community and to wildlife conservation in general. And it R3 has grown to be just this really significant, large conversation
Mhm.
nationally about bringing in new hunters. And I want to ask this question, please. This is not a gotcha question. One, because I have an answer and I want to hear your answer. And you know me, I would never ask gotcha questions, but there are certainly those even in our communities that are at least moderately outspoken against R3 efforts, right? As it relates to it's already crowded, right? It's already hard to find space. I would love
Mhm.
to hear your answer about, um, almost ask a really leading question about why that's crap. That's very leading because my
I have
opinion, right?
a game on the shelf. It's called Fact or Crap, and it has paddles in it that say fact on one side and crap on the other. Like I should have had that for this entire interview. Like that's crap. That's
Well,
crap.
I'm not going to ask it that way because that's incredibly leading, but I'd love to hear like your answer to, in response to that as it
Yeah,
relates to why this really is okay. I'm going to be leading why this is important for our community and for conservation.
yeah. There's a lot of different components to my answer to that, and so I'll try to keep it focused on just a
Okay.
few. Um, the first part is that it's not R1, it's R3, and
Mm.
I know for a fact I've heard you also say that phrase. Like we're not are one-in people out here. This isn't just about, and you said
Yeah.
it earlier, we do a disservice to ourselves because we talk about this sometimes. R3 is not just about getting new people into hunting and shooting sports.
Hmm.
It's also about taking care of people who are already participating in those activities as well, retaining and reactivating participants. And so I think the misconception nationally that R3 is just about recruitment is part of why we get so much criticism from folks that are looking at crowding as an R3 issue.
Hmm.
And access is absolutely an R3 issue. We need to ensure access. But I will tell you, any access initiatives that happen on the landscape related to R3 benefit existing hunters just as much as novice hunters. And if
Yeah.
anybody wants folks paying attention to access to land and making sure that everybody has an opportunity to get out in the field and hunt and has a clear pathway to stay involved and get reactivated in hunting and shooting sports, that R3 is there for you and part of the solution. So that's one misconception I would push back on. We're not just R1, it's R3. And the initiatives that R3 goes through benefit existing hunters just as much as novice hunters. So that's part of it. And I will tell you that it is R3 programs like the one out of South Dakota that secured 1 million acres of private land access for the existing hunting population. And that's because the public became significantly more reliant on public land over the last 5 years than had historically, and South Dakota did something about it. The agency, through their R3 program, invested a ton of money in securing access to private land. And there are a lot of programs like that out there that are benefiting hunters and making sure that access is a component to their R3 solutions. So that's one piece of it. Another component here is that our most dedicated cohort of licensed buyers in the country right now is a predominantly baby boomer population of folks, and we're at peak 65 this year. That means that the most number of people who have ever reached the age of 65 in a given year reached that age this year. So we have baby boomers that are going to be aging out of these activities, and as the dedicated cohort of our time ages out of hunting participation, making sure that their following populations, the echo cohorts after them, the ones that are coming up behind them, are participating in the same rates, needs to happen. What we don't need is for them to disappear and the sports and activities and love of wildlife and stewardship disappears with them. So
Yeah. Yeah. So where we spend a lot of time, I feel like, talking about barriers in hunting. What are some of those barriers that prevent people from trying hunting, from getting back into hunting, from staying in hunting? What do those look like?
mhm. There's the kind of 5 or 6 that get bantied about frequently. That's common in most research,
Mm-hmm.
and that is, I don't know where to go,
Mm-hmm.
or I don't have access to a place to go. I don't know who to go with, and we'll come back to who a little bit later. Let's talk about social support next, if you're good with that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where to go. I don't know who to go with. I don't have the knowledge and skills to do it. So I didn't grow up doing it. I don't have the knowledge and skills to do it. I don't have the resources, so either it's too expensive, or I don't have the equipment, or the time is another one of those resources. And then regulatory complexity is another one. I don't understand the laws and regulations around this, and I'm worried that I will accidentally break a law. So I am not going to do it because
Yeah.
it's too much. So those are some of the top components. And I think you can add a belonging component to that as well. If the
Absolutely.
stereotypes in my head or in social storytelling show me that there aren't people with my values that look like me or that have my kind of relationship with wild spaces out there doing this thing, or if my social support network does not support that activity, I'm not going to participate in it. And that's the concept that's embodied by, if I don't see me, it won't be me.
Yeah.
And I think that would be another, a core tenet of barriers people experience when they're looking at hunting and saying, well, do I see myself doing that thing or not?
Yeah. Absolutely. So you brought up social support. What
Mm.
what role does social support really play in bringing someone into hunting and then uh, keeping them engaged in the pursuit?
Yeah. So there's this thing called the ORAM.
Old ORAM.
Talking about ORAMing in R3 world. No, so the ORAM is the outdoor recreation. I'm sorry. We talk about the outdoor. I'm only kind of sorry. Recreation adoption model, the
Yeah.
ORAM. And these are the discrete steps everybody goes through whenever they start doing something new for the first time, specifically an outdoor recreation skill. And it takes people through the first recruitment steps of awareness, interest, and trial, and then takes them through this opportunity to like decide to continue doing that thing once you've tried it, and then the retention phases of continuing with support and continuing without support, and then it talks about reactivation if we lose folks. Underlying this whole pathway, this whole model, this whole pathway into participation is this larger underpinning concept of social support. That if you don't have access to people who can share resources or knowledge or skills with you, you're
Mm-hmm.
screwed. If you have a community that is not intellectually supportive of what you're doing, you're screwed. If
No
you
knife.
don't have people who can go with you out into the field and enjoy those activities with you, you're tanked, right? So that there are multiple components that are dependent upon a community and how important as community members it is to have that social support to participate. So that is huge. And I will say, okay, so there's research that came out of University of Nebraska Lincoln with Ducks Unlimited, and it pointed to waterfowl hunters. And it showed that women on average have 3 or fewer strong connections in hunting. And men on average have 5 or more strong connections in hunting. And coincidentally, women are one of the fastest growing demographics of participants in the country. They want to participate in hunting at a high rate. They try it, but the decision to continue that requires the next steps opportunities past the trial event, that requires social support networks, because the social support networks are smaller and more limited, we're losing women very quickly. They're not being retained after
Mm-hmm.
they've been recruited. And so you can see in a real life case study how essential social support is to keep folks involved. And I would also share that when we have children, when we move, when we start new careers, that a lot of the burden of becoming parents also without social support to get re-involved, without folks asking, hey, do you want to come out in the field with me again? Hey, without a new community of people saying, there's this wildlife management area down the road. Do you want to come check it out with me? It is so easy to fall off that cliff and never come back. So social
Yeah.
support is such a core important tenet of R3.
So let's say, novice hunters listening to this show, and they're saying, okay, Taniya just listed off, 4 or 5 areas of social support that I need. I don't even know where to start, right? I don't have that right now. Am I just hosed, right? Or what options exist out there that may help me to connect with social support in the hunting community?
That's such a great question. I like to come at this from a non-traditional perspective. If you're a traditionalist and you grew up in a household, you're gonna go join the local Pheasants Forever chapter, and that's gonna be it.
Yeah.
Or you're gonna go join National Wild Turkey Federation. You're gonna go join Ducks Unlimited. And I am an avid member of several of those organizations. I'm actually an avid member of the Rough Grouse Society, but that would not have been my first step. Instead, I would just say that finding one experienced person, and when they extend an invite, you take them up on it.
Yeah.
Would
You
be
say
like,
yes.
just say yes
Mm-hmm.
and be vulnerable about what you don't know, because people want to show up for you.
Yeah.
People want to share and teach what they're excited about. And if you give them an opportunity, instead of pretending like you know it all or you don't know much, just find one person that knows a little bit more than you and come to them with questions and just say yes when the invitation is there. And that can look like people in school with you, people at work, your neighbor down the street, somebody at the library, a random conversation at the farmer's market, looking up your state's hunter education team. It can be anything. It can be somebody you bump into at a state park.
Yeah.
It can be so many different ways, but just saying yes and being willing to ask questions is just the very first step. And also, I would share, you don't need somebody that's been hunting for 80 years to be your mentor. I learn best from somebody that knows just a little bit more than I do because they remember what it was like to be where I am and they can draw me the map to get to where they are.
Yeah, I think one of the big pieces, and you pointed it out there, is really, you're right, saying yes, but also choosing to choose your attitude about how you're going to approach learning, right? I don't know if this is a human experience. It's certainly my experience. When I go to do something new and I don't know what I'm doing, I feel embarrassment. And it makes
Mhm.
no sense about why I feel that, right?
Mhm.
If I was a student in school and I went and sat down on day one and the teacher handed out a test, I'd be like, what the heck, right? You haven't prepared us, right? But yeah, we
Mhm.
expect ourselves to be like incredible, like to not have any questions, just to intuitively know things about doing things in front of people, right? And so I feel if you really do can choose to say, okay, I'm a student of hunting. I'm going to be a student. I don't know anything, and that's okay. And then approaching people saying, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. Could you please help me? I can guarantee you that people would fall all over themselves to say, I'd love to. I'd love
Yeah.
to help you. And there's a ton of resources, whether it be actual resources that come from the hunting industry to find someone who can help you, or just Facebook groups, right? There's a lot. Like I can guarantee if you went to a Facebook group like hunters in your area and you joined it and said, hey, I'd really love to learn, you're gonna get responses from people
Mhm.
that are gonna be willing to help you, even just answer questions via Facebook Messenger, right? If that's what you need, right? In that
That's
moment.
right.
That it's totally there. You just
Yeah.
have to kind of admit, I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah. Is anybody out there could help me?
Absolutely. Well, and I
Yeah.
would offer that that is a place where sportsman groups can play a really active role. Like if somebody felt comfortable coming to our Rough Grouse Society chapter meeting or our Pheasants Forever chapter meeting
Yeah.
or Ducks Unlimited or NWTF chapter meeting, you would have like 50 new best friends who were like, I can't wait to go to the range with you. But
Yeah.
it feels like an act. It feels like a very brave act to walk into a room where you have no idea what you're walking into. And the
Yeah.
people that you look at may not look a damn thing like you. And
Yeah.
they may be you, looking at you in the same way, like who are you and why are you here? But to walk in and say, I care desperately about what you care about. And I would like to learn more. And I have questions. You're absolutely right, Jay. Like having those conversations, asking those questions is the very first step to developing relationships that can lead to all sorts of skills development and friends in the field and mentorship opportunities. The other thing I would advise is like if you already have an established friend group that wants to learn something new, like do something brave together with people you know.
That's
So
great
like
advice. Yeah.
man, I have a group of hooligans, absolute hooligans, and they are nuts. And we always pick up new stuff together. So we're like, we took an art class together and we learned how to do stained glass, and or we went to a brewery and learned about like beer tasting with specific food and whatever. One of the things that we're looking at doing is an archery league together. One of the things that we're looking at is we're going to take those archery skills and try out turkey hunting with one of our network people who has a little bit of skills about turkey hunting. So when you're able to hang out with people you already like and you're picking up a new skill together, that fear, like that first step fear of like, oh, I don't belong or I don't know what I'm doing is like soothed by either being a dingus with someone else who's also a dingus and you're in it together and you can laugh together, or by like leveling up and learning something together and now you belong in this community because you got someone to go with and you've already overcome one of those big barriers.
For sure. I think another thing to look into for a novice hunter, a new hunter really trying to find their way is, and I've said this before, but I will say it every podcast I do, because your state agency there and the NGOs that exist in our space, National Turkey Federation, National Deer Association, Pheasants Forever, etc., they all have programs that are 9 times out of 10 completely free,
Mm-hmm.
and they are led by people who are absolutely fired up to help novice hunters and to help people get their foot in the door and to start. And I think from a level of risk perspective, you're showing up with a bunch of other people who also have no idea what they're doing, right? That's great. And so there's no like outing. There's no like, I'm the person that's, kind of out of, norm here, because
Found
everyone
me
else is
out.
in the same, everyone else is the same there, as it relates to, they're all starting this journey at the same time. So I can't say it enough, or from the mountaintop, go and look at your state agency's websites, look at chapters of NGOs in your area, because I guarantee you they have things on their calendar that are coming up in your general region that you can go and participate in. And some of them you can kind of choose your own adventure, right? Some of them are actual mentored hunts. And if you feel like you're in a spot and ready to go and harvest your first animal and do that, that's fantastic. If you just want to meet a hunter, right, and have conversation, I know a lot of them do like turkey fantail creation, or there's different levels that you can kind of choose from that kind of match where you are at the moment, to kind of get your foot in the door and to see if this is something that you really enjoy.
Yeah.
For a new hunter at least, right? Not necessarily from the retain reactivate perspective, but although retain and reactivate can also participate in state agency led programs
Sure.
if they so choose.
Yeah, especially
But
as a mentor. But I would also offer that, like, one of the things that gets me all fired up about being an active participant in conservation is the feeling that I can give back. I can be a steward.
yeah,
And NGOs have been one of the pathways to, like, getting my hands back in the dirt, getting
yeah,
my body back on a piece of land that I care about and that I am helping to care for,
mm-hmm,
that I'm cleaning up and that I am removing invasive species from, and that I'm actively, like, making habitat for wildlife with my volunteer time. And, like, regardless of whether you choose to hunt or not, or if you do hunt, but the rest of the year you want something else to do, NGO involvement has been really rewarding for that specific reason, like having a way to get involved with caring for a local land. I think that's really powerful.
Could you tell us more about what you're doing with NGOs these days?
Oh, yeah. I had a fun project I want to tell you a little bit about. This is not to exclude any of my other memberships in NGOs. I view them all as highly valuable and
They're
important.
all precious children.
They're very and wonderful partners in conservation, right? And a
Yeah.
lot of them have phenomenal programs. So I am not
Yeah.
intentionally leaving anybody out, but I am a particular geek about this specific project right now. When I moved to Minnesota, I lost all of my contacts in hunting. I work at the national level. Like, it's not like I got a one buddy that lives next door that I can go hunt with.
Yeah.
I knew people at the state though, and one of my state contacts said, "Hey, Rough Grouse Society just started a driftless chapter." Now, the driftless zone in southern Minnesota and western Wisconsin and parts of Iowa and Illinois is such a cool, archaic chunk of land. It's a super unique geological feature in this part of the country. And it's such a beautiful conservation opportunity. And so my friend was like, "Get involved with these folks. It's a new chapter of Rough Grouse Society." I'm like, "I don't hunt grouse. Like, I don't even know really what they look like. I don't even know where they live." And they
Google
said,
rough grass.
he was like, "You're like, "Google. Hey, Spruce, my AI chat GPT. Could you please tell me everything there is to know about grouse behavior and habitat and food?" So I got involved with them, and like after our first meeting, they saw that I'm into strategic planning and education, and they invited me to be their education and partnerships chair for this chapter. And so we've been geeking out about fundraising opportunities with a local brewery, where the brewery is going to make us a conservation related habitat in the driftless beer. It's going to be hazy IPA. I'm super excited about that.
There you go.
And we get to name it and fundraise for work in the driftless zone on habitat restoration. And that makes me super, super excited. So
That's so cool.
you think about if you have stereotypes in your own head about what working with a critter group might be like you can also be the change you want to see in the world, and you're going to see just so much fun opportunity to get locally involved with conservation. And that's what I'm really jazzed about, is having stewardship be an active part of my life for me and my family. And that just makes it that much more likely where I'm going to find friends to go out in the field with, to learn how to hunt grouse with, to geek out about nature with. And yeah, if I could just encourage anybody, it's to continue to say yes every opportunity you have.
It's important. Saying yes.
Mm,
It's hard to do
yeah,
sometimes, but it's important for sure.
for sure.
Okay, so let's put our future hats on. Talk
Future
about the
hats.
future a little bit, right? Future
Future
hats are real
hats.
shiny and somehow metallic. I don't know why, but that's what they are in my head.
I don't look good in chrome. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I don't know that I'll look in chrome. We'll see. We'll all be wearing chrome eventually. So,
Uh,
what trends do you see shaping the hunting community over the next decade?
Trends
Yeah,
shaping the hunting community. All right. So this generational transfer that we just talked about, where we've got our traditional committed cohort of baby boomers aging out of some participation to a degree, not all of them, of course, and we've got younger audiences coming in. I will share that younger generations, their relationships with nature and their values about nature are very different than our traditionalist populations.
yeah,
So, wildlife values research shows us that folks have just more of a pluralist, mutualist relationship. This is more of a side by side relationship with nature rather than a
Mhm.
dominionistic relationship, a top down, I manage it, I dominate it, right?
We're getting deep now.
Yeah. So that relationship, that value shift
Yeah,
in society, on top of the fact that as of 20, I think it was 2021, folks under the age of 18 were minority white for the first time in history. We have whole age demographics now that are predominantly Black and brown folks, right? And so the shift in society of becoming increasingly more diverse and having a different relationship with wild spaces and different values about how we care about nature and
yeah,
growing up with climate uncertainty all across the landscape, that
yeah.
that is going to be driving how people connect with wild spaces and wildlife. And that could be a core tenet of why people choose to or want to be a part of the hunting community, whether it's shortening the supply chain so that you're bringing home locally sourced high quality protein to your family that was part of your relationship with nature. It could be how you give back to nature through volunteer work and your relationship with NGOs. It could be a lot of those things. But I think that those societal pieces are going to play an active role in how hunting looks for the foreseeable future.
I know this is a podcast, and I do post videos of this, so maybe some people will be seeing me, but I'm sitting here smiling and nodding my head because, yeah, just like, yes, because, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. You referenced the idea that the predominant age of hunters now is that like 65 range. And in the next decade, those folks will for sure be on the aging outside
We'll be
of,
slowing down a little bit.
of, of hunting. Yeah, I'll be slowing down a little bit. And so I really don't imagine a world where hunting is going to go away because I think there's too many really smart, really passionate people like yourself in our community driving participation, driving the shaping of culture, driving all of those things are important to keep hunting here. But I do think, as you've mentioned, because of the way in which younger generations really visualize the world, the culture of hunting is going to change a lot. I think there's going to be significant change in the way in which hunting is viewed, conducted, all of those things. And I'm here for it. Like I have a real optimistic outlook. I think it's not hard to find folks sometimes in the hunting community that may not share the same optimism that I'm expressing right now. uh, but I'm extremely optimistic because I think that those culture changes. I think one of the reasons why hunting it struggles a little bit right now is because the worldview of the people who are, and not disparaging in any way, but the worldview that are the predominant hunting community right now does not necessarily match particularly well with the worldview of of the younger generations, and I'm sure that's been a tale as old as time, right? That's not something new. um,
Mhm.
but like those things don't mesh particularly well, and so as more younger generations or younger folks come into hunting, I think we're going to start to see, some shift in that. And I think it will
Yeah.
ultimately benefit uh, accessibility from a people perspective, not necessarily from a land perspective. Accessibility and um, general tone. I really do believe it's going to be in 10 years. We're going to look back and say, "Dang, it's lots changed."
Well, it's changed.
So
But and I think taking care of our hunters as long as they are interested in and able to participate is a huge component of this, right? Like
absolutely,
making sure
yeah,
that there's access and opportunity and an easy opportunity to engage with the local agencies and NGOs to continue their pathway as long as
yep,
possible. That is a huge important component here.
yeah,
While also bridge building, because I think if we ignore the need for bridge building, the like the stewardship that comes with hunting will become irrelevant to younger audiences because the lack
mhm,
of representation, the lack of storytelling that represent their values could be an option here. And so I think this bridge building opportunity is where you and I can come in and say, hey, there are a lot of shared values across the whole community,
yeah,
and we are a whole lot more alike than the things that separate us. There are so many more things that unite us than those that separate us. Well, how do we pull together in this conservation picture to continue to use hunting as a meaningful wildlife management tool and also to protect that lifestyle for folks that choose to feed their families that way and to
yeah,
have a relationship with wild spaces that way, while also thinking in a new way about what storytelling sounds like and what relationships with nature look like when we represent them at the national level. So I think it's a multi-pronged component. We're in this phase of discovery and transition right now. And um, I know it's going to be challenging, but also like full of opportunities to discover some really like new and innovative conservation solutions at the same time.
yeah.
Mhm.
No, I'm not trying to like throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? In that response,
Mhm.
but um, and you're right. It ultimately comes down to the bridge building element in that eventually the generations now are going to be the people that we're talking about. Okay, well, I probably won't be around for it, but like they're the 65-year-olds and they're,
Mhm.
the predominant hunting age.
Mhm.
But yeah, all very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've had an awesome conversation.
Yeah, it's been
Is
really
there-
good, Jay. We're like an hour and a half going already. This is
I
good.
know, I know. So I'm trying to find my exit ramp, but I don't want to
Yeah.
find the exit ramp until I ask, is there anything that in the R3 world, in your personal hunting story, whatever the case may be, that I haven't asked you about that you feel would either A, really benefit novice hunters, or B, help folks to reframe an idea in their minds, whatever the case may be?
Yeah. I think two things. One is, and I mean this sincerely, is be curious. And I mean that towards people, and I mean that towards skills, and I mean that towards nature. Like if we're going to do this bridge building thing between the people that don't have skills and the people that do have skills, between the people that don't have access to land and the people that do have access to land, between the people who feel represented in this community and the people who don't feel represented in this community. Bridge building is the essential skill, and that will always require curiosity long before judgment, long before judgment. So if I could ever encourage anybody in our communities to be oh so curious with yourself, why do I feel this way? What skills do I need? Where can I grab those things? How can I show someone else warmth and curiosity as well to learn about them and to find out, what they know. But that curiosity is the very cornerstone of relationship development and skills development as well. So one would be curious. And second would be have grace um, with yourself, especially while we're learning, because developing as a hunter is a process, and it is never never perfect right out of the gate. So it's okay to learn and give yourself grace and time to go through that progression without getting discouraged.
For sure. Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, it's all learning and growth opportunity. So, which I
Absolutely.
get really excited about.
Yeah,
Well, thank you so much, Taniya, for agreeing to spend some time with me. I greatly enjoyed having a conversation with you. So thanks for being here.
I didn't drop like a single F-bomb that whole time. I'm really proud of
You
myself.
didn't. Honestly, I'm quite proud. Like the
Thank
editing is
you.
gonna be real light here.
No, I appreciate the invite, Jay. It's an honor to be able to sit on your podcast with you. I can't wait to see where this thing goes and other conversations that happen in this space. You make such a warm and inviting place to have these conversations.
Thank you so much. That's great.
Thank
So
you.
if this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who's thinking about getting into hunting, or maybe someone who helped you get into hunting. I'd love to hear from you all listening. If you have any questions or comments, please send them in at community@evolvinghunter.com. Any questions you send in, we'll answer them live on the show, or somewhat live. It is a recorded show. And our guests will get a chance to weigh in on their thoughts as well. And if you want to follow along, please make sure that you're subscribed to the Evolving Hunter podcast. We've got more conversations and hunting stories coming, along with practical conversations about skills, ethics, and what it takes to grow as a hunter. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and keep evolving. I really hope you enjoyed that episode of the Evolving Hunter podcast. One last thing before you go. If you're thinking about getting into hunting, before you go and buy gear or plan a hunt, you need the right foundation. That's why we're so excited to be partnered with CertifiedHunter.com. They have state-approved online hunter education that teaches real-world safety, ethics, and responsibility, not just test answers. If you want to start hunting the right way, head to CertifiedHunter.com/evolvinghunter and get certified today.